Kaufman's most recent film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, follows the typical style that has become so synonymous with the filmmaker. Robert Daniels describes it as Kaufman's least accessible films in some ways, but his most universally affecting in others. This mind-bending foray into the final thoughts of a man who is contemplating ending his own life truly highlights Kaufman's surreal style and emphasizes the theme of loneliness that is rampant throughout his work. The film presents two concurrent stories, one being a lonely janitor, Jake, who has essentially stayed stagnant his whole life, the other being what is actually occurring in his mind, a journey through his own life explored by an idealized version of a woman who never actually existed. This woman is both the ideal woman and an extension of Jake himself. Interestingly, this reimagining or casting of oneself draws parallels to the main character in another of Kaufman's films, Synechdoche, New York. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is incredibly dense, referential, and hard to follow. One of the most prolific sequences that demonstrates Kaufman's style occurs when the woman and a younger version of Jake go to Jake's parents' house for dinner. After a confusing random meal, she insists that they leave before the storm gets too bad. Suddenly, everyone disappears and she is left to wander through the house looking for Jake. Each room she walks into, she is presented with a different version of Jake's parents, them rapidly aging and de-aging. They talk about Jake as if he's 50 years old, then as if he's only a child. This sequence is a surreal amalgamation of all of Jake's memories colliding at the same time. These memories reveal more about Jake's bleak past and lonely, uninteresting life. The mechanics of this are best described by critic Brian Tellerico. Kaufman is trying to find a storytelling approach that goes beyond simple plot, conveying the loneliness and relative stasis of human existence. This loneliness and isolation is apparent in other aspects of the film, from the desolate visuals of the blizzard to essentially every scene of older Jake. The final shot is older Jake's car covered in snow in a parking lot, implying he died of hypothermia. The shot is framed like a painting, connecting back to the woman and her landscape paintings. The scene evokes that feeling of isolation, leaving the viewer to digest what they've seen.
The film Synechdoche, New York was released in 2008 as Charlie Kaufman's directorial debut and remains a lasting example of both Kaufman's undeniably recognizable style of research and the typical unconventionality of his surreal and ambitious approaches to exploring the authenticity of the banality and absurdity of life. Kaufman is also well known for his acutely personal and uncompromising screenwriting. Synechdoche is no different than his other projects in its unabashed refusal to conform to conventions of storytelling. The film is densely layered in self-referentiality, with additional directorial attention paid to obscuring the possible resolutions of included visible metacognitive processes. But what does Kaufman's project look like? At its most basic, Synechdoche depicts a sprawling pastiche of life itself about a struggling artist's own attempt to create a sprawling pastiche of life itself. The actual construction of a meta-play inside of another play becomes part of a staging of a world that is fundamentally contrived with respect to liminality within the mind of a man named Caden Cotard. Thus, critical reviews upon release were admittedly mixed due to this fact of the matter. There also comes a point later in the movie where a woman actor auditions to relinquish Caden of his creatively self-imposed directorial duties. She attempts to grant a seeming sense of reprieve from the very essence of life by which Caden is demonstrably burdened. She auditions for her role as Caden by asserting that, quote, Caden Cotard is a man already dead. He lives in a half-world between stasis and antistasis. Time is concentrated, chronology diffused, and up until recently, he strived valiantly to make sense of his situation, but now he's turned to stone. And she's entirely correct. The plot reflects this notion and evolves instead of building, while viewers are meant to interpret the specific meanings established and recurrent thematic ideas. According to The Atlantic, quote, the result is a film that isn't quite philosophical nor psychological, but rather neurological in impact. Synechdoche doesn't make an argument. It evokes a mood, a broad sensation of regret and exhaustion. The world it conjures is one in which truths remain hidden or misunderstood. Kaufman suggests it's the viewer's job to interpret the meaning.
Anomalisa is Kaufman's approach to a more traditional narrative structure. While the film is extremely linear when compared to Synechdoche, New York, or I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Kaufman still plays with our perceptions of time by stretching scenes far beyond their logical conclusion. In fact, most of the scenes in Anomalisa capture a sense of the mundane and trivial aspects of everyday life. Kaufman includes this to highlight Michael's extremely morbid clinical depression. Kaufman also plays with these ideas by giving the majority of the characters in the film one shared face. Likewise, while the world around Michael is colorful and saturated, the characters are all drab and plain. This contrast highlights Kaufman's continuation of his themes of loneliness, also touched upon in Synechdoche and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. However, these aspects pale in comparison to Anomalisa's surprising use of voice actors, or rather the lack thereof. If you were to look up Anomalisa, you would be surprised to see that there are only 3 credited voice actors. While this is obviously unique for a variety of reasons, the way they are utilized truly encapsulates a world of loneliness never before seen in film. Michael is voiced by David Thewlis, and everyone else is voiced by Tom Noonan. However, instead of changing his voice from character to character, Noonan maintains the exact same pitch and inflection, regardless of age or gender. The result is a world where not only does everyone look the same, but they also talk exactly the same. Kaufman plays with these ideas to illustrate Michael's utter loneliness in the world. The audience instantly understands the horror that Michael finds himself in, where even his wife and son look and talk like everyone else. Peter Travers from the Rolling Stone writes how Anomalisa gets under your skin in ways you can't imagine, and rightly so, providing a window into what we all truly fear, being alone. This contrast also highlights the meaning between Michael and the titular Lisa, an anomaly who has a different face and voice, being voiced by Jennifer Jason Leigh. Michael falls for Lisa instantly, declaring his deep and unwavering love for her. He even offers to leave his wife and kid and start a new life with her. However, Kaufman's story is not that of romance or healing, but that of thematic commentary. Lonely people do not just become unlonely overnight, and likewise, Lisa soon fades away with a similar face like everyone else, with her voice eventually changing to that of Noonan's. Matt Zoller-Stites puts it best in his review of the film. Too many movies speak in a boring, typical storytelling voice. This one speaks in a voice as singular as Lisa's.